My name is Janaki Deepak, and I shouldn't have been moderator here because clearly I became late, but thank you all for waiting for me. We are doing this presentation now for our third year in a row, and it's basically talking about navigating the residency interview and on Zoom and other virtual platforms. Our speakers today are Dr. Natasha Chida, who is the program director of the Osler Medical Residency Program at Hopkins, Dr. Dobbin Chow, who's the chief chair of medicine at Midtown, and he's the program director of the internal medicine residency program and the transitional residency program there. And last but not the least, Dr. Sapna Kuehl, who is the program director of internal medicine residency program and transitional medicine residency at St. Agnes, Ascension St. Agnes Medical Center. And I know that our governor, Dr. Colleen Christmas, is also here on the call. And so is Mary Ellen Woodward, who belongs to ACP Maryland, who basically helps us coordinate everything. And Dr. Sam Kant, who is responsible for putting together this workshop. So Dr. Kuehl.
Great. I think, sorry, I had this intro slide here and you got the introductions done. So wonderful. I think just to make sure that we have no disclosures and we don't represent the views of ACP or our institutions, we are just going to give you perspective from years of experience as program directors here. Our agenda today is to talk a little bit, we are focused more on interviews, and as Dr. Deepak talked about it, when we had the sudden switch to virtual interviews, we felt like there was a real need for people to know how to maneuver through the process of interviewing. And so started giving these workshops, which have been very popular. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pre-interview preparation. Dr. Chow will be talking about the interview day itself, and Dr. Chida will be talking about the post-interview process. And we will leave ample time for questions and answers because I know that's a very popular thing as well. So here's a picture of our residents graduating just last month. I can't believe how quickly the cycle goes by, but here we are already trying to recruit for next year again. So many of you know that getting into residency feels like it's, hold on a second, just give me 1 second. I have a cat issue.
While she's running to take care of her cat, clearly you can see that. Yes, go ahead, Sapna.
I am so sorry. I had a cat that snuck under the bed and I thought it was out of the room. So I apologize for that. Anyway, getting into residency feels like it's a marathon. It's not really a 100-meter dash. It's a whole process that starts often in the junior year or penultimate year of medical school, and then continues on into your final year for several months in a row. And so you kind of have to, like in any kind of activity that's rigorous, like a marathon, you got to plan, pace yourself, prepare, and then kind of perform. And the typical timeline, as you may already know, is that this year would be that in the summer and spring, you may have worked on your personal statement, your CV, getting letters of recommendation lined up. And in June 8th, the ERAS opened, and so you could get a token. Often dean's letters are being composed around this time of July and August, and then ERAS opens for applicants coming up soon. The supplemental ERAS in particular. Then you can start submitting applications on September 7th this year, and then the supplemental ERAS application closes, and then September 28th is often the deadline people keep in mind when programs can open ERAS and start downloading your applications. And you want to try to have them as complete as possible by then. Certainly, typically the timeline is programs start sending you invitations in the fall. There's interviews and then the rank list and then match day, aha, you get to find out where you're going and onwards. So what about the match for internal medicine this year? We had 641 internal medicine programs that were accepting applications. About 9,380 IM positions were offered. 13,800 some applicants to medicine. And you can see that there is a large percent of IM positions that are also filled by international medical graduates who are both US international medical graduates as well as non-US. And then 5,800 positions were filled by US grads. So our focus today is more about preparing for the interview. And in the past couple of years, it's been virtual. There is some controversy right now about whether it will be all virtual or not. There are some programs who may be offering in-person interviews because it is challenging to recruit to certain remote areas. And there hasn't been a consensus amongst programs. So stay tuned, but I have a feeling it's going to be mostly virtual, but there will be some programs that may end up offering in-person interviews only or in optional approaches. So from a candidate perspective, most of us have probably not interviewed on a virtual platform before, and so it may not be very clear what to expect. You also, it feels a little different because you cannot observe other people around you, other residents and faculty interactions to really get a sense of a place. And the time you spend with faculty from a program is limited. And a lot of programs have different expectations. Some do half days, some do a couple of hours. And so you do have to adjust to what different programs' expectations are. Of course, it's good to work to be prepared and plan ahead and get as familiar as you can with the process, which is why I guess you are here, so that you can get comfortable with this process and be as ready as you can be. So I think it's important to prepare for each program extensively, review the timelines and the recruitment event of the day. Make sure you clarify any questions you may have ahead of time and the logistics of what's expected for the day. Do you have breaks? Do you have a lunch break? Are you expected to work to be present on screen for several hours? So just find out those logistics. Of course, it's obvious, but you do need to know your application well, because if you discussed some research you did a few years ago and you have forgotten what it was all about, anything on your application's fair game. So please make sure you refresh your memory and are ready to talk about things. I think in terms of technology and virtual presentations, certainly test your technology beforehand and on the day of the interview. And if you have cats that are running around your house, make sure that you have them out of the room, even if they're hiding, so that you can give your full attention at the interview. Certainly charge your devices, have a backup device if need be. Make sure that the stage, the background, lighting, all those things are important. So it sounds pretty simple, but it's important to make sure that the camera webcam is elevated, not too low. There's adequate lighting around you. And, the chin is often not the most favorable part of our facial anatomy. And so it's important to make sure that it's not that you're looking down at your interviewers. Certainly, you want to minimize the distractions, turn off your phone and apps on your technology, and be ready because it could be a few hours that you're on the screen. Another key thing that wasn't available in prior years is that you can hide your video so that if you get distracted by seeing yourself on the screen and you keep wanting to look there, it can take you away from looking at the camera. And so that's a nice feature that is now available for most of the apps. Also have an emergency number for someone you can contact. Say you end up having technical difficulties during the interview or have trouble connecting for the interview. Also, be ready if there are some short notice interviews, because unfortunately, sometimes we get cancellations last minute. And if you're available and have already been in touch with the program, that we could smooth that path along. Certainly practice. It's important to see how you present yourself virtually. And I think Dr. Chow will talk a little bit more about specific questions to expect and what to think about for the interview day itself. Ultimately, you don't want to present yourself too rehearsed. That is no good either, because that also takes away from an informal conversation and getting to know you as a person. Some people prefer to schedule their most preferred programs sort of mid to late in the season, giving them some opportunity to practice interviews as well with other programs. But now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chow to talk specifically more about the interview day itself.
Hi, everyone. Let's see, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. All right, well, at any rate, hey, I'm glad to be part of this panel. And I'm program director at University of Maryland Medical Center Midtown campus here in Baltimore. I'm going to talk about the interview. Let's see. So we're going to talk about what to expect on the interview day, whom to impress, what to bring, what not to ask, and what the purpose is. And then there'll be some common questions that the faculty will be asking you, and I'll see if I can help you with some of those answers. Okay, so first you got to prepare, and so as Sapna says, be familiar with the program. So that, what does that mean? That means be sure you reviewed the website, you reviewed Frida, and have some sense of what the program is about. It's not necessary that you have to do a literature search on every faculty member that you're going to interview with, but just have some familiarity with the program. And even before the day starts, have some questions in mind as you read through the website, you read through the Frida materials. Hopefully that material will prompt some questions in your mind. All right, now, look, I did not make the slide. Far be it from me to tell people how to dress. Hey, by the way, all right, you guys see this? This is an ACP tie. All right. If you wear an ACP tie to the interview, that'll give you points. Just saying. All right. But at any rate, I got this slide from my friend Sarah Wallach up in New Jersey, and so if you want to criticize this or complain about it, you can complain to Sarah. But she recommends a conservative approach. A suit with a tie and a shirt for men, a suit with a blouse for women, a dark colors, beige in the warm climates. But so this is back when we were interviewing in person, no bare feet or legs, no sneakers. The hair should be groomed and no long nails or decorated fingernails. So All right. Now, and men should be clean, shaven, but probably more important than the dress is the way that you come across. Come across friendly, excited, have a smile, have a sense of confidence, also a sense of enthusiasm, of energy, of being interested in being there, even though you're not there. You're in your apartment in front of your camera, but give the impression that you're excited and you're happy. Lean into your camera instead of sitting back and have a relaxed pose. Be a little bit have a forward position. So sit forward. Try to look the interviewer in the eye. What does that mean? So that means that you got to sort of look at your camera. Now, sometimes your camera is to the side or to the top of your screen, and then when the interviewer looks at you, they're looking at you, and your eyes are not quite straight ahead. So try to center your camera so you're for the most part you're looking at the camera. Okay, and then have your stuff ready at your side. What stuff meaning? Your CV, maybe if you have publications that you want to refer to, have them available. If it may be possible that an interviewer wants to talk to you about one of your manuscripts, then it's there. You can pull it out and look at it quickly. Now, there's a TED Talk by Amy Cuddy, and she's this is a famous TED Talk. It's been viewed by 21 million people. It's been criticized as well as celebrated, but at any rate, so what is the theme? Is that for 20 minutes, anybody, me, can get yourself psyched up and present a persona that you're excited and you're ready to go. All right. So imagine that you're a soccer team, and the soccer team is about to go play soccer. And what are they doing before the game? Are they hanging out and looking at their cell phone and surfing the internet? No, they're in the locker room. They're psyching themselves up. They're giving each other a high five, whatever it is soccer people do, and they're getting excited. And so before you go for your interview, you go to the bathroom or you go to your bedroom and you look yourself in the mirror, and you get yourself excited, jazzed up, and you say to yourself, "Yeah, I can do this." And then you sit down and you nail it. You communicate that enthusiasm, that energy. Not that you're trying to portray a different version of yourself that you are not, but just have. It's like if you were going to go out and play soccer, you'd want to have that energy and that excitement, but you still would stay within your own personality. But so that's sort of her thing, and her theme is that your body language communicates more about who you are and what you are than what you actually say. Interviewers, the faculty, when you start talking about stuff that you've done, and you talk about stuff that you've done, and you talk about stuff that you've done, sometimes they glaze over. But if you focus on what it is that you might be able to do, what your potential is, that to them is exciting. That to them makes them utilize their imagination and be able to formulate a story in their mind of what the future is going to be. So think about that. Think about instead of focusing the conversation on what you've done, focus the conversation on what you might do based upon what you've done. All right, common interview questions. These are, and there's quite a few of these. What led you to apply to this program? What are your goals? How will our training assist you in meeting them? What are your strengths and weaknesses? I hate that question, but that comes up a lot. Tell me of a time when you made a difference for a patient. Either you made a great diagnosis or you did something extraordinary. What challenges have you faced thus far in medical school? What would you do different if you had to do medical school over? What advice would you give to a new student entering your school? These are just questions to sort of having your be ready to answer these questions. If they don't come up, then that's fine. If they come up, then you'll have a ready answer. And the purpose is that they want to get to know you. There's no perfect answer for everyone. It's not the same answer for everyone, but try to come up with something that so that you're not waiting and thinking and spending time thinking about what the possible response might be. Also, be honest, transparent, and forthcoming. Don't try to think of an answer that you think, oh, this is an answer that's going to please them, therefore I'm going to talk about something. Just talk about something that's meaningful to you. There's these set of questions called behavioral questions, which are pretty popular, and you're going to get these. And what are behavioral questions? These are questions where they ask you about a set of circumstances. Tell me about a time you worked effectively under pressure. Tell me about a time you made a mistake and had to tell a resident or attending. Tell me about a difficult decision you've had to make in the past year. Tell me about a time when you've tried to accomplish something and you failed. Tell me about a time when your performance was criticized. Tell me about a time when you were upset with the behavior of a team member or faculty and how you dealt with that. Now, why do they ask these questions? These are crazy questions, right? Why do they want to know the answers to these kinds of questions? Well, they're trying to understand, how are you going to behave? How are you going to be when you are a resident in their program? And the best predictor of future performance, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. All right, so let me tell you how to approach this. So first of all, answer truthfully. Don't make something up, and think about a relatively recent scenario, a recent circumstance. I asked a applicant about a time when they failed, and of course they don't want to mention anything that they failed at, right? That gives a negative impression. So this student told me about a soccer tournament that they lost when they were in the 5th grade. Now, the 5th grade was a while back, and I said to him, "Well, gee, that was a while back, wasn't it?" And but I don't know. So think about something that's relevant and that pertains to your training, and also might pertain to what your future performance is going to be. So let's say they ask you about a time that you did not accomplish what you set out to do, a time when you did not reach your goals, a time when you maybe were criticized. Talk about that. But in addition, talk about how you use that experience as a learning tool, and how you've transformed your performance because of that experience. And now that's one of your that's one of your areas of excellence, that you excel in that particular area because you focused on it. You created a methodology to reform or to remediate that particular skill set or that area, and now you're proud of how you perform in that area. So tell that story about, and that's all about performance, practice-based learning. So sometimes the behavioral questions will be linked to the program's key skills or core values. For example, one of the core values or one of the areas that the program is most interested in is in resilience. And so a question might be, our residents often express difficult or challenging address difficult, challenging situations. Give an example of a time when you faced a challenge that tested your coping skills, and how would you have a sense that they may be interested in learning about your resilience? Well, you read the material about the program, and sometimes the program will mention what their core values, what their key what their key drivers are. And another example might be the internal motivation of their residents. And so they may be proud of the fact that our residents go above and beyond. Please describe a time when you went the extra mile when it would have been just as acceptable not to, and why. Third example is conflict resolution. Tell me about a time you had to deal with conflict with a team. So if you can get a sense for what are the things that the program is very proud of, that the program is focused on, they may ask you behavioral questions in those areas. All right, there's different types of interviews. There's a traditional one-on-one interview with a faculty member. It might be 20, 30 minutes. Then there's this phenomenon of speed dating. Now, I don't know too much about it. Sapna is quite an expert on this. I don't know how she achieved that experience. But anyway, you have a bunch of faculty people, a bunch of faculty members, and they only meet with each resident for 10 minutes at a time. And they will usually say the same question or ask the same set of questions each time. So you only spend 10 minutes with a faculty member, but then you might meet 8 faculty members in the course of the day. And you just, so it's trying to orchestrate that, I think is a challenge. Anyways, it's something that you'll see, and some programs will utilize this methodology. Another is called group interviewing, where there might have the group of residents and then a group of faculty, and I think that's very challenging because there's group dynamics involved there, and there may be some applicants in that group who are more outspoken, and they may tend to dominate the conversation. It's so that's a difficult challenge to navigate, and I'm not sure that that's a very common practice, but I've heard that occur. And then resident interviews, meaning that you might interview with current residents in the program or current chief residents in the program. All right, let me give you a hint about those. If you interview with a resident in the program or chief resident program, that's not a time to let your hair down and relax and engage in just casual conversation and talk about the fact that, hey, you really don't like studying very much. You rather watch Netflix movies at night. No, you're on point, and the residents will give feedback to the program with the same degree of importance and value as other faculty members. All right, what to do when you're asked these questions? A very sort of icebreaker question, a question that they often you enter the breakout room, or what are they called, the private room. You enter a room and there's a faculty member there, and they might start the conversation and say, "Oh, tell me about yourself," and that's a tough question to answer. And of course, you want to make a good impression, right? So rehearse the answer to that question, because you're going to get that question, and if you rehearse it and you nail it, then the rest of the conversation can go very smoothly. You've created a good impression. You've started off with a lot of momentum. So how do you rehearse this? Well, there's a HBR YouTube video by Christine Liu, so she is actually the daughter of my wife's best friend, and of course I didn't know her, and I didn't know Christine, but all I heard was, you know how, so my wife and they always complain about their kids, right? So so Christine Lou's mother is always complaining, their apartment is messy and they don't ever call me. And then I find out about her, and she's very impressive. So anyways, I encourage you to look at this video. The HBR they do really nice work. But her approach is mostly in the business world when you have to do interviews in business. But I think what she says applies. And what you're trying to do is try to create a short narrative that draws interest to you as a person. Another question might be, tell me about an interesting case you're involved in. So have a case in your pocket. And if you don't, if you don't have a case, that doesn't look good. So just have a case, and if they ask you about it, go ahead and talk about it. And it should be hopefully a case that you were involved in, a case that you had a role in the management of, and and the case that had a compelling answer, compelling resolution. Now, there's at the end of the interview, they always say, do you have any questions for us? Do you have any questions for me? All right, and so don't say no, but you have to say something. And hopefully the conversation will have gone in a way that some interesting questions came to mind, and you'll ask those questions, and that's great. And options are you can also ask them open-ended questions like, hey, tell me about the culture of your program, or how can I as a resident contribute to the culture of your program? Tell me about how residents contribute to improving patient safety at your institution. Because what that's trying to do is to demonstrate that you have interest in enhancing the program, enhancing the institution, enhancing the patient care of that. And that's your goal. That's what motivates you. That's what gets you up in the morning. Avoid canned questions. I don't know. Applicants can go to some website. I don't know where it is. They go to some website and they can find questions, and it just it's very aggravating to get asked these canned questions. How are residents evaluated? If you had all the money in the world, how would you spend it in improving your program? If I had all the money in the world, I wouldn't be. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be doing this. All right, so that's the end of this section, and then is the plan to. I'll stop talking. We can take questions later.
All right, thanks, Saul. So then I'm going to follow up from Dr. Chow's presentation to discuss the post-interview process, which is a bit shorter than what you've already heard. And my goal here is not necessarily. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the PowerPoint. My goal here isn't to be necessarily comprehensive about all the things you may encounter in the post-interview space, but to sort of give you a general framework of how to think about it, and then spend some time answering questions that you may have. I'll say that there's really no one way to do things. Programs all do things fairly differently. And so there isn't really a hard and fast rule about some of the things we're going to talk about. I think the most important thing I would want to convey is that I feel like applicants sometimes, are really concerned about small details that have either happened throughout the application process or about their application. And frankly, program directors and committees are managing so many applicants that if you accidentally put your abstract in research instead of presentations, we are okay. We're not going to be worried about that. So, I feel like then in those situations, applicants will wonder, should I email the program and tell them, oh, I put this in the wrong spot, I'm so sorry. Like, it's really, I just want you to understand our perspective, which is that we're looking at this on a much larger scale. And so the things that I think can seem big worries to you are often not things that we're really that concerned about or worried about. And we generally give folks the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the application, because ERAS is not the most user-friendly and not the most clear. And so it's very understandable that sometimes there may be mistakes in the ERAS application. I can't think of any program where if there's like one thing that's happened, it's going to like make or break your application. Your application is a portfolio of who you are. And we look at everything in the application, and one thing doesn't sort of make you like lose from the pool. Okay, so I'll stop having a soapbox there, and I'll try to here share this, and give me one sec. So sorry, let me go to there we go. So I think the most important thing I wanted to communicate was post-interview communication, because it's not necessarily a new topic, but I think it's something that still generates a lot of questions and concern from the applicant side. And I'll say that the NRMP has been very clear about what expectations should be regarding post-interview communication, which is that applicants may have questions and programs should answer those questions and engage with things that applicants want to know about. But programs should not be reaching out to candidates to require post-interview communication, to ask them where the applicant is ranking them, to try to get information on the applicant's ranking of them. It's very clear that that is a violation of NRMP policy and rules. And so I'll say this is directly from the NRMP website, and I've bolded, I think, what's the most important language here, which is that the recruitment team may exchange and clarifying information with applicants following an interview, but should not solicit or require post-interview communication with a goal of influencing applicants' ranking preferences. So I would say the majority of programs really try to abide by this. And what this means for you, I think, is that the absence of communication from a program after your interview does not imply a lack of interest. And so most programs will tell you that. So for example, on every interview day I say, we don't engage in post-interview communication. You are not going to hear from us. If you have questions, please do feel free to reach out, but you won't hear from us reaching out to you. And that doesn't mean anything. It just means we're trying to make the process equitable for everybody and not pressure anyone. So don't take a lack of communication from a program to mean a lack of interest. They're typically just trying to follow the rules here, which are really put in place to support applicants and prevent applicants from being pressured unduly and put in difficult spots. And I'll say that AIM, which is the Academic Alliance of Internal Medicine, which is our society for internal medicine program directors and clerkship directors, et cetera, basically says the same thing. And they note that programs should tell applicants if they engage in any post-interview communication. And if they do that, they should be very clear about what that communication is going to be. It should be the same for everybody. They should not use phrases such as you're ranked to match, you're highly ranked, et cetera, because again, the goal of there is really probably to put pressure on the applicant. And they should be clear about expectations regarding notes and things like that. So just some common questions. I want to thank Colleen for sharing these with me, because I was having some difficulty thinking about what to talk about. And these are all questions that she had gotten recently, so I assume many of you have them as well. And also, I would invite both Dobbin and Sapna to add to any comments here about questions that you get as well, or answers that you may get. Because I'll tell you what my perspective is on these questions, but again, there's really not one right answer for a lot of them. And so would definitely want to hear if other folks on this call have different perspectives. So the questions around thank you notes, I'll say that ideally a program should tell you if they don't want thank you notes. So I tell everyone, please don't send thank you notes. The reasons is I don't really see what the point is. I'm assuming everyone's happy to have interviewed. And, we interview approximately 350 to 400 people. And, so if 4 people send me a thank you note, it just doesn't really do anything. And I understand that it's being polite and that's very kind, but it just, in my opinion, isn't necessary for my particular program, but that may be different from other programs. So I think you can, if you're unsure, if the program has not said, we don't do thank you notes, et cetera, just ask if you are considering doing this. Just say, and ideally, to be honest, on your interview days, so that you're not having to send an email, which then someone has to respond to. You can ask I typically like to send thank you notes. Is that something this program welcomes? And they'll tell you, don't worry about it. And then if they say, don't send a thank you note, don't send a thank you note. They're not being polite. They actually just don't want you to send it. I definitely don't think paper thank you notes are particularly helpful. To be honest, I check my mail at work like every 2 weeks. And so often I don't get the note until after the whole season is over. But I would just encourage you, if you're thinking about doing this, just to ask the program, do you think like, I do, this is something I consider doing? Is that something this program engages in? In terms of, and so I would stop and ask, does anyone have any, anyone from the panel have any other thoughts about that or differences of opinion there?
Well, so in the business community, if you interview for a job and you don't send a thank you note, that company is not going to hire you. It's just standard business practice, and it should be a written thank you note, not a type one. So I realize that the reason why we don't like thank you notes is it's a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I don't condone it, but I'm not trying to encourage it, but I feel like if people want to be polite, we should. I don't know. I haven't discouraged it, and I haven't encouraged it, because if people want to want to exercise the standard business practice, they can do it. On the other hand, it is the holiday season, right? When they finish the interview, and then sometimes they send Christmas cards, holiday cards. That's a bit much. All right. Anyways,
Dobbin, can I ask you though? Does receiving a thank you note change your view of the applicant?
No. But I just want them not to feel their hand shouldn't be slapped if they did it, because it's a practice that's common courtesy in the business community.
Sure. I think the point is this is not going to help you match at a program sending a thank you note. I do think if the program specifically asks you not to do it, I would not do it. If the program states during the interview day that they don't want thank you notes, then I would not do it. But I appreciate that point. So if you feel like the interview didn't go well, but you really love the program, is there anything you can do? I mean, I think often interviews go better than you think they have gone, to be honest. So I would try to just sort of maybe reflect on, did it really go that badly? But I think, you can always reach out after the fact just to express your interest in the program and that you really enjoyed the day and meeting everybody. I don't know if I would necessarily reach out to over-explain something that happened during an interview. I actually haven't had any experiences where there's been something that's strange that happened during an interview that then someone reached out and tried to explain it to me. But I think in general, just expressing your interest if you really love the program after the fact is helpful. And I'm not sure if Sapna again and Dobbin have had other experiences here, or Colleen, given that you were also residency program director for many years.
No, I don't think it is helpful to try to explain or engage in more post-interview communication. As you mentioned, I would discourage that.
Thank you. What if you've had a paper or poster accepted after you've interviewed? I think it's fine to send the residency email address an email just saying, oh, I'm excited to share that my poster was accepted, my paper has been published, etc. That's certainly something you can do, and we do take note of it. In terms of expressing a preference, I think different programs see this differently, and it depends, to be honest, on the program in terms of how they're thinking about their rank list. So some programs will appreciate a sense of where they're going to be ranked. Some don't really need to know. So I think if you have a place that you know is your number one, I think it's perfectly helpful to tell the program you're ranking the number one. That does not mean you're going to match there, but it doesn't hurt at all. What I generally would not do is say I'm ranking you very highly, because then the program knows you're not ranking them number one. And then it's like, what's the point? Why are you telling me this? Or like, I'm ranking you number 5. Like, I think my personal opinion is that if you're going to tell a program you're ranking them number one, just tell the number one program. And I would not tell multiple programs you're ranking them number one, because then if you don't match, they know. And like, this won't cause a problem or anything, but it is a smallish community enough that if you're applying then for fellowship or something, they may remember like, oh, this person told me that and then they didn't come. So they weren't being truthful. Do other folks have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's not helpful. I find that in the last 20 years of doing this, most of the time, people who tell me that they're ranking us as top are not.
Yeah.
And so it just is not helpful. It just feels slimy. So just stay away from it if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely a program should, again, not be asking you where you are ranking them as well. But I would say, to echo Sapna's thought, I think, on our side, when we see this, we're like, well, that's nice, but it's not like we necessarily believe it, because we've all had experiences where folks have said this and then we're not. Right? So we generally, I would say most programs are not going to adjust their rank list based on what an applicant telling us that.
There's a phenomenon called letter of intent. I don't even know what that is, but I started getting them last year. Applicants after the interview would send me a letter of intent, and then I wondered where they get this. What is but at any rate, it's not a common thing to do. I discourage people from doing it or feeling compelled to do it. Just fill out your rank list and what'll work will work. But that's I don't think it's a thing.
Yeah, I agree. I actually got a couple of those too last year. I don't know if they were either.
Natasha, could I add?
Yes, please.
I agree with you 100% about it's perfectly fine if you want to, and you're positive about which programs you're number one. If you want to send them a letter saying, I'm ranking you number one, I don't expect any further communication about this, just letting you know. That's nice. Program directors are like, oh, great. Like, I know this person wants to come here and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't do you any harm. It may not sway where you are in the rank list, but it certainly doesn't hurt you, and it's kind of sweet. Your other point, though, about don't send more than one program, the number one thing, I have had that happen when I was program director, and I will tell you the world of medicine is very small. And a lot of people come through Hopkins again, looking for fellowships and so forth. And I actually kind of remember those names of people who said they were ranking us number one and we ranked them to match and they didn't come. And so I would say, one, it's unprofessional to do that. And two, it might come back to bite you. So don't do that.
I appreciate that, Colleen. Thank you. Yeah. And then the last question is a difficult one. So how do you handle programs that aren't necessarily asking you, hey, what are you ranking us? But they're sort of putting some pressure on you to tell them. So they're not necessarily absolutely violating match rules, but they're sort of walking that fine line. I would say probably the first thing I would do is seek out a mentor or your clerkship director or sub-I director, someone in leadership at your institution to sort of explain the situation and get their perspective. And sort of get some advice on how they would approach it, because there's going to be different gradations of this and there's different responses. I would say what I wouldn't do is feel like you need to respond immediately. If you're receiving communication that makes you feel a little icky, it's perfectly fine to not respond immediately and try to gather more information from people you trust who are in educational leadership, because they might be able to look at this and say, this is clearly inappropriate, or they might say, no, this is actually okay. I think you're misreading it, etc. I would think that would be the first thing to do. If you talk to someone, they're like, this seems to be inappropriate. There are actually reporting processes to the NRMP, and you can report programs if they are violating. I think my general thought would be, if a program is engaging with you in a way that you are uncomfortable with, that's probably not a program that you want to be in for 3 years, because if they're not going to respect your feelings or the pressure they're putting on you now, it makes me wonder how they're going to think about you over the coming 3 years. So I might just take that as a hint, as maybe this is not the right place for you if you feel uncomfortable with communication you're receiving. I think those are sort of the two things I would think about. It's like, try to reach out to someone and get their opinions and thoughts. Don't respond immediately. If it seems like a clear violation and people agree about that, then I would consider reporting, and I would also consider if it's a program that you're interested in still. And curious about others' thoughts on this. This is a challenging one.
I think I would agree with everything you said, Natasha. Stay away from the program. Because if there's some flags there, it does make you wonder what's going on. So, and please report programs if there is something that you deem as unprofessional.
I think that's all I had. So I know now we're in the Q&A section, so I will stop sharing.
Yeah, awesome. So I have been monitoring the chat. Can you all hear me? Yes, okay. So I'm going to read out a couple of the questions. I've been trying to put them in groups. So one of the questions, and I think it's been addressed, was when we talk about interesting cases, does it have to be in internal medicine only, or can it be in other subspecialties? And I think it can be anything but any, yes, can be any specialty or subspecialty. What do you all think?
I think it can be other specialties. Certainly, it's nicer if it's internal medicine, and it's something I can kind of engage you more in discussion about, because it comes to something that I might be able to speak to. And internal medicine is so vast. And if you're applying to it, I hope you could have at least found one interesting case in internal medicine to talk about. But at the end of the day, if it is something else, I don't hold it personally against the applicant.
Awesome. The next question is when the whole thing about the years of graduation, and I think Sapna, you did address that if the program mentions specifically that they accept students only within 3 years of graduation, should we apply or not? And if you have been more than, if you're 5 years within graduation, is that still okay to apply? So I think that you address both those questions, right, Sapna? And any other thoughts from anyone else? Dobbin, Colleen, Natasha?
I think it's more important what they did during the time between graduation and applying. That's more of an important question than the actual number of years.
Awesome. The next question, and it's a very interesting question, is do you look at your applicants' social media profiles, and does that influence your decision or your opinions?
I don't, because I don't have time, so I don't do it. I don't know, maybe other people do.
I don't. I would agree with Natasha. We have thousands of applicants. We interview a fair number of people, and I don't have the bandwidth to do it. I don't know if some of my faculty may do that if there was some concern they may have, but I have not personally engaged in that.
Dobbin?
So I wouldn't know how to do it, but the chief residents. So I have my chief residents help with interviewing, and they do it, and I guess just something that I didn't ask them to do it. They did it, and so last year there was one applicant that had that was a reasonable applicant after when she interviewed, but they were quite concerned about what was posted on her social media, and they brought it to my attention, and they thought that was not something that should be out there, and that did affect her final ranking.
The next couple of questions are, one of the questions is a non-US IMG getting work experience only in September, and then they'll get their LORs only after submission of application. So what do they do? Do they do like, how can they let you know or that the LORs are in? I thought you can't submit without LORs, but I am clearly out of the submitting process.
So you can submit with 3 and then add the 4th one when you get it. So, you know, you certainly, there's a maximum of 4 letters right now. And so you could submit 3 and then once you get the one in September, add it. I think that might be the easiest.
And then the other question is about supplemental application. Like if you want to express a certain interest in the supplemental application, do we do it in email or written letter?
Oh, well, there's a supplemental application materials, and it's the last year was the first year they did this. It did not. It was not terribly successful from my view, but it's a way to signal to 5 programs that you're applying to that you have particular interest in those 5 programs. It's an option for students. It's not required. It's also an option for programs to participate in this process. If you signal to the program that you are interested in them, then at least then the program will know, hey, that student only had 5 signals, and we were one of those signals, so that must count for something. But there's no requirement. That doesn't mean that you at the end of the day have to rank those programs 1 through 5. It just means that in September, when you submitted the supplemental application, that you were interested in those 5 programs, but maybe after you interviewed, you hated the program and you decided not to rank them at all. And so there's no obligation, but it's a way to, and it's not just signaling programs. You can provide details about your experiences that you've had, and also you can signal geographic preferences, geographic areas in the country that you prefer to be in. So it's a way to help students be able to communicate their preferences to programs, and maybe and I think this year will go much better, because last year programs had to go to a different program to access that information. So if I'm a program director, I'm on ARIS, I'm looking, and then I wonder, gee, did this applicant signal us? I have to go to another program, open that up, search, and it was a headache that was a lot more work than what I was actually interested in doing. But this year it's going to be embedded in the same program, so I hope it'll be more user friendly for the programs to access that information.
So I think the question, sorry, Dobbin, the question was, should it be, in addition to that, should there be a written letter or an email in addition to the supplemental?
I think that the supplemental itself speaks for your interests, so I would not send more information.
Okay.
Most programs, like Dobbin said, I agree with everything Dobbin said about the supplemental application process. It was a mixed bag last year. Some programs interviewed everybody who signaled, or close to everybody, but most people ended up at least reviewing the application if they wouldn't have reviewed it. But there were other programs that didn't use signaling at all. So it was all over the place. I think from my perspective, if you signal my program, it is helpful for me to know that you are interested, because we get close to 6,000 applications. I have to figure out how to narrow the applicants to somebody who's interested. And so I can imagine that now that it's part of ERAS, it could be used as a potential filter along with other things by our program directors.
Yeah, and I think that the answer about the scores, waiting for the scores, step 2 scores, has been answered by Dr. Chida. The question was, do you wait for step 2 scores or not? So she's answered that. The next 2 questions about what do you kind of sort of say when you answer, like, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about some weaknesses. There's this concern that that's more of a vulnerability thing. So how do you address that? And I think, Dr. Christmas, you did address part of the weakness question, but like a little bit on when you say, tell me about yourself, what does that mean? Do you talk about your work experience? What do you talk about? Like, what do you focus on? And I think this comes true for, like, I remember as an IMG coming in, I didn't know what to talk about myself when they asked me that question. So I can definitely understand that question. Any takers? Any of you?
Is the question like, what should you say if someone says, tell me
Yeah.
about yourself? I mean, I think at that point, they're just trying to get a sense of like who you are as a person. So I think you can talk about your background, where you grew up, anything that's important to you from a family standpoint, hobbies, things like that. I wouldn't just talk about medicine because that's actually not what they're asking.
Got it. Got it. And then the other other couple of questions are, is it mainly USMLE scores or is it the whole application? We get this every year.
Well, that's a good question because this year, I guess some of the applications won't have a step one. If your step one score was a numeric answer, that you got a numeric score, then that will show up. But if your report was just pass fail, then that's what's going to show up.
I think it will start in a couple years, Dobbin, because it stopped this year. So
This year.
So it would affect the second years who are taking it, unless it's an international applicant.
Mhm.
But
So I don't know. I think this. I guess it. Well, it does make a difference. The scores do make a difference.
there's very little objective data available. So certainly we try to do a whole application review when we select people. But it can vary. If you cannot, I don't have the manpower or logistics to read 6,000 applications in a small program like mine. And so we have to use some kinds of filters to narrow down the applicants.
There is a question on couples applications. So what if you are interviewing, but your partner did not get an interview? And is there any extra information you need to give? And is there a difference in how those applications are processed?
So thank you for asking that question because it's an important one. Look, if you are a couple, then you should be happy because the data shows that couples match at a much higher rate than non-couples. What does that mean? If you're not a couple, go get yourself a partner. No, but if you look at the data in ARIS, sorry, data in NRMP, the match rate for couples is much higher than it's quite high. So that's to the good. Now, I think that the person asked an excellent question. If you got an interview, but the partner did not get the interview, go ahead and let the program know. Let the program know. At the end of the day, the program wants the couple to be happy, and it would not be. They don't want the couple to be separated. So let the program know. And
I'll also just add, if you also mean that your partner is applying to a different program at the same institution, and you got an interview at one program and they didn't get an interview at the other program, you can also tell the program you're interviewing with, hey, my partner's applying to X specialty, they don't have an interview yet. And that program can reach out to the other program and see. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll get an interview, but it's completely acceptable to do that.
Awesome. The next question I had, and it was a direct message, so it didn't pop up, was, is there a difference between applying on September 7th versus September 28th, when like does it matter that your application went in on September 7th versus your application went in later in terms of how they are reviewed and things like that?
No, because September 28th is when ERAS will open for programs. So we cannot see anything till then as program directors or faculty. So when you put the papers in, doesn't matter for up till the program opening date.
And then thank you for that. And then there's a question about, if there's a non-clinical LOR, and which Dr. Chida did answer, like if it's from a research mentor, does it carry, how much weight does it carry?
I think it depends on the program. So I think just understanding the programs you're applying to is important.
It also depends on the applicant. If the applicant states in a personal statement that my interest is to pursue a academic track, then that's an important letter. And on the other hand, if that's not the interest of the applicant, and their goal is a totally a clinical outcome, then a research letter looks a little funny in that portfolio.
Awesome. And I think that we have answered all the questions, and just to wrap up, this has been awesome. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the other panelists who are here, and all the and of course thank Sam Kant for organizing this. So we have put our emails out there. Feel free to reach out to us and ask us more questions. Hopefully you have gained something from this, and thank you everyone.